Hello and welcome to a brand new Arseblog Arsecast right here on arseblog.com. How are you? Hope you're well. Thank you very much indeed, as always, for being here. Today is a bit of a post-match podcast because we played Bolton last night in the Carabao Cup and won 5-1. A couple of goals from Nwaneri, a debut goal for Raheem Sterling. Debuts all over the place for Hale End Academy graduates. They are graduates now, aren't they? Now that they made their first appearances for the Arsenal. And all in all, it was a pretty enjoyable night, particularly in the context of what we've had to endure, if that's the right way of putting it, over the last couple of weeks. So I'm not going to dilly-dally too much. We're just going to get on with the show today. With me to discuss last night and some of the other bits and pieces that are going on this week, it is Andrew Allen. Good morning, Andrew. Good
morning and happy birthday.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's an auspicious occasion, what can I tell you? Everyone loves to turn 53. That's what it is.
I'll let you know how I feel in a few years.
Fuck you. Anyway, thank you. And, we're sitting here this morning. We have a nice game to talk about. I think, over the last week or 10 days, there's been a lot going on. It's been fairly high stress. It's been grueling. We've been away from home. There's been a lot of drama, a lot of effort and hard work. And it was nice, I suppose, just to be back at home in the first place, but also nice to experience a game which had so many positive aspects to it, which didn't feel like any tiny little thing that went wrong was like a dagger to your heart.
Yeah, 100%. It was, I guess, as relaxing an evening as you can get when you head to the Emirates. I mean, it's been a long time since we've been drawn against lower league opposition. It feels like we've had a real run of tough luck in draws in League Cup and the FA Cup recently. So, yeah, I mean, it was great, and I guess the anticipation ahead of the game was sort of. You couldn't help but be intrigued by what was going on because the lineup was going to be so different, and we knew pre-game that there was going to be a 16-year-old in goal, which obviously raised eyebrows. And I thought overall it was great. I mean, as usual with the crowd situation for the League Cup, I mean, it was a big mix of people, much younger demographic, but. Pretty much entirely sold out, the Arsenal end. I think Bolton took nearly 4,000 tickets as well. So it was a real packed house and just shows you just how popular a ticket it is, to get to Arsenal these days. So,
it's sort of been that way in the past where the Carling Cup or the Carabao Cup, the League Cup, to give it its generic title, was a chance for younger fans to sort of get to see a game and take their first steps along the path of an obsession that will, ruin them for the rest of their lives. But also, a chance to see some young players. And I think the fact this was, on paper, a favourable draw. You're playing a team that's in League One. I was watching a little bit of the build-up on Sky Sports last night, Sky Sports Plus. They had Jamie Redknapp and Kevin Nolan. I paused it very soon into it because they just kept showing goals from the past when Bolton beat Arsenal. It was really quite annoying. Stelios, whatever his name, Giannakopoulos scoring a goal, and oh God almighty. And you remember what a pain in the arse Bolton were, so I was like, right, I'm pausing that. I'll come back when kickoff is about to start. But they are a different prospect now. They're obviously a League One team, and it does allow Mikel Arteta to make some changes, and it did allow him to do that. There was obviously a very enforced one, which we'll come to in a moment when we talk about the goalkeeper. But I suppose the eyes were on two players in particular, maybe one just a little bit ahead of the other, which could be a little bit unfair, but obviously Nwaneri holds the record for being the youngest player ever to play for Arsenal. I think Jack Porter broke the record for youngest starter last night. Is that right? But Myles, Lewis-Skelly as well, two guys who've been involved over the course of the summer, did very well in the US and showed, I think, that they are ready at this level. But of course, the fixture list being the way it is and the way some of those games played out meant that, they didn't have much of a chance in the opening part of this season to show what they're about. Last night was very much about that. And then you have the ability to sort of augment those younger players. There was a debutant at right back as well. We should point out Josh Nichols. with experience and with players who can sort of guide them through the game. So you had this nice mix of youth, Hale End Academy graduates with some senior players who've got a little bit to prove as well. And I think overall the cocktail was nicely shaken last night.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was definitely anticipation in the crowd. I mean, after all the chat about Nwaneri and obviously against the context of Ødegaard's absence, all eyes were on him. What can he do playing in that pocket behind the strikers? And I mean, he really didn't disappoint at all. I mean, he's just he's a lovely player to watch. Just so calm and controlled. Always a sort of a yard ahead of every the action. Really, he knows what he's going to do with the ball. He kind of caresses his passes. Perfect weighting on the ball. He's just playing with a lot of confidence at the moment, and I think. He has a bit of that kind of Jack Wilshere look about him. I know that's a bit of a sort of lazy comparison because, again, he was a young guy who came through the ranks. But there's something about the close control, the way he kind of moves around the pitch. He doesn't look the fastest. He doesn't necessarily look the biggest, but I actually think he's probably, physically far more robust than Jack was at 17. And just you kind of, after about 10, 15 minutes, you just forget that he's one of the youngest guys on the pitch. You just watch him and he's moving around. He's got no qualms directing other players around him, senior players around him. He just knows exactly where he wants to go. And I think just that willingness to be inside the 6-yard box as well when it matters really underlines a quality there that maybe we're slightly missing at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought, particularly for the first goal, the run into his first goal rather, I should say, the run into the box to get on the end of the Sterling cross was excellent. I mean, I don't know what you thought, obviously, you were there, so maybe you've got a better view of it than I do. I sort of felt like the young players were told to keep it relatively simple. Don't do anything too complicated. Don't try anything to impress. Just be part of the team effort. And you can see with Nwaneri that there are levels to his game that I think we will unlock and we will see more of as time goes by. But I think as a sort of instruction to all of those young players, on a night where it's his first start for the club, it's Lewis-Skelly's first start for the club, it's Josh Nichols' first start for the club and his debut for the club, same with Jack Porter. You have these young guys and you want to protect them. And we know that Arteta has been often quite cautious when it comes to young players, because I don't think with him it's a case that he doesn't think necessarily that they're good enough or that they don't have talent or they don't have potential, but what he's very keen to do is not put them into a situation which traumatizes them. That's maybe too strong a word, but he doesn't want to do anything that undermines their development at a key age. It was interesting. He was asked in his press conference afterwards, like, where were you at the same age as some of these guys like Jack Porter as well? I was, Barcelona B, flitting between La Masia and the first team, and then he went off to PSG at 17. So he obviously had a different trajectory, but still 17 is very young to go to a new country, play for a different club. But it was, I think, telling last night that he was able to trust in the talent and the potential of some of these guys. And obviously a couple of those positions, he had to make a decision because there was no David Raya, Neto not available because he was cup tied, no White, no Timber because of injury. He had to go with Josh Nichols, where maybe he might have gone with a safer option, had one of those two been available to him. But, I think putting those players out there in that mix with those experienced players, is really good for them. And then for those players to actually perform the way they did in those circumstances is very, very impressive, even if, some of the expectations we had for them were quite high.
Yeah, I think you're right in saying that he probably told them to enjoy themselves and keep it simple. I think that maybe stood more for Porter and Nichols than it did for Lewis-Skelly and Nwaneri, because I actually was very, very impressed with Lewis-Skelly and the way that he was able to kind of marshal that left-back area. He didn't really look out of place at all. He kind of looked like a Zinchenko clone, really. I would say 100% the fact that that Nichols had Kivior next to him probably slightly made life slightly more difficult. I don't feel like the communication was quite as there as it was on the other side between Calafiori and Lewis-Skelly. I mean, it was really interesting watching how the senior players interacted with the young guys. Jorginho in particular spent, I'd say, the first 15, 20 minutes mostly with his, just back, or sort of his facing the young guys, pointing to them, directing them. He was sort of had one eye on the game and one eye on whoever was young and on the ball. And he really, it felt like you were just watching a coach on the pitch. There was a moment, I think, relatively early on where Kivior played a pass which didn't quite make it to Nichols, I think. And Rice and Jorginho were not impressed and had a word with Kivior, and they were kind of like, mate, come on, like, you know the situation, like, let's not put them in danger. But they just did, they did very well. I just hope they really enjoyed that moment. It certainly looked like it by the end of the game when they had that lovely selfie with, the whole bench worth of under 20s, I guess they all were. I mean, it's a strange one with Lewis-Skelly, isn't it? Because when we looked at him in pre-season and Arsenal decided to start playing him at left back, you were kind of like, well, how on earth is he going to get game time when we've got 8 left backs? But he's shown something there that does make you think, okay, maybe when the FA Cup comes around, obviously the next round of this competition comes around, there's an option there. And then, ridiculously, with our injury situation, we are in a situation where he's a bona fide option because we've got 2 other left backs playing at the centre back. But yeah, let's see how things go. I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Because I think had circumstances not conspired against us, obviously you could see Tomiyasu would have been playing, Zinchenko would have been playing. Obviously, Marino could have been out there or someone else. Would they have got the chances? And I find that kind of sliding doors moment so interesting for these youngsters because we've had a whole load of guys leave in the last couple of years. Raw Waters, Kozia Dubry. There's been others who just clearly haven't seen that or had that opportunity through no fault of their own. Arsenal just either got a bad draw and it was too much of a risk, which is what you were alluding to earlier. You don't want to chuck in youngsters into the deep end when it really is that deep. But these guys have had this opportunity now, and they'll always have that with them. And, it may be the high point for some of them. You don't know. For others, there are a couple there who you genuinely think, okay, these guys have got careers. But I think Tim wrote a really interesting piece last week about the introduction of young players and how we almost forget that it's not this linear journey. That Wilshere didn't just come into the first team and stay in the first team. He actually went off to Bolton on loan, and that Ashley Cole, when he came in, had a season with Palace and had to be recalled basically, and he came in. Smith Rowe again, was off at Huddersfield and RB Leipzig. These guys actually do end up kind of having a go, disappearing for a bit, coming back, and maybe that's what Lewis-Skelly and Nwaneri may have ahead of them. Yeah,
I mean, it's fascinating to think about because the reason they were front and centre on the tour was because it was an international summer with the Euros, with Copa America. Yeah. And then, there's this thing where it's like, well, would it be easier for them to get into an Arsenal team that wasn't as good? In the same way, for example, the when Bukayo Saka, Joe Willock, Ainsley Maitland-Niles, Eddie Nketiah, etc., started to make their breakthrough. It was like, Arsenal were not what we are now, right? But the fact that we are so good means that so many of our players are away on international duty that it's sort of opened the door for these guys to make their claim during pre-season and get game time during pre-season. And yeah, you need opportunities. You need things to go your way. You talked about Ashley Cole. He was away at Palace, and what would have happened if Silvinho's passport wasn't made out of whatever it was made out of? You know what I mean? All of a sudden, Silvinho was gone, and then we needed a left back. The doors open for Ashley Cole, and those injuries that you referenced have opened the door for Lewis-Skelly and have opened the door for Nwaneri to an extent. I think it's a positive thing. I think part of what made last night interesting as well was, there's an expectation that these guys are going to start, right? Particularly Lewis-Skelly and Nwaneri. But we've also seen both of them in high-pressure games in the Premier League. Nwaneri came on in the derby. Lewis-Skelly came on against Manchester City on Sunday. And I think that told you something about the way that they are viewed by Mikel Arteta. Injuries notwithstanding, I think, if he had any doubt about either of them, they wouldn't have been put into those situations, because I think he did have other options available to him for the changes that he made in those respective games.
Yeah, I think the summer really underlined that they've earned his trust, and I think they're a level above some of the other guys who are kind of knocking on the door. And that's fine. They might just be two of the standout players of their generation. I mean, both of them are playing ahead of themselves at England level as well.
Yeah.
And I think, given the squad is pretty small, the first team squad, smaller than I think Arteta would like it, even smaller when you consider the ridiculous injury situation we've had to deal with so far. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, and I've looked at them now, I'm like, okay, these guys can play minutes. I don't know that they're necessarily ready to start games. Like, I don't think physically they've got quite enough puff to kind of do a 90 minutes. I have to say, Nwaneri was brilliant yesterday, but I don't know whether the cameras caught. He was down with cramp at 80 minutes, Bolton player helping him out. He'd by that point already gone a bit quiet. The last 10, I think kind of the last 20 minutes, he was there and he was tidy, but he wasn't influencing the game in the same way. So while I think there's an opportunity for him to play minutes, I think you have to be very aware this is not Martin Ødegaard. He hasn't got that engine yet.
That takes time, doesn't it, to develop?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, that was his first attempt to play 90 minutes of senior football. And the pace, even against a League One side, is different. I think young Jack Porter realised that with pretty much his second touch of the game, right? I mean, the ball came back to him. He wanted to take a touch, and obviously the Bolton player was straight on him, and it was a bit of a, heart in the mouth moment. But that's something that will come, and it will only come with them getting more game time. Yeah,
let's talk Lewis-Skelly a bit, because I know there is focus on Nwaneri, and we'll come back to him and come back to his second goal as well. But I really liked what stood out to me actually was just how good he is in the air. Like, he's not the biggest, obviously, but he, wins his aerial battles. I think the timing of his jumps, the timing of his leaps. He played a brilliant pass for Raheem Sterling as well. You can see that there, and Sterling's another topic of conversation actually, because of the way he moves. And I don't mean like he runs like a dinosaur. I just mean the movement that he has. But, that pass from Lewis-Skelly, the vision, the ability to execute it, of course, it comes across to Nwaneri, who finishes to make it 2-0. But he just looks really, really comfortable. And there is this focus on Nwaneri because I think he's in how would you say it?
A more glamorous
position. That's exactly it. He's got the ability to get himself in the box and get on the end of things and take shots and make passes high up the pitch, which, of course, catch the eye. But, I don't think Bolton were brilliant by any means, but these are big, strong men for the most part, playing in League One, a very physical league. And I think to see him and the other young players, stand up to that physically was really very impressive.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting what you said about him being really good in the air, because actually I think anybody who watched I think it was last season, no, it was 2 seasons ago, the run to the Youth Cup final, and Lewis-Skelly, I think in something like the 120th minute of the semi-final, the ball was played into the box and he rose highest to head home and take the team to the final. And I was looking at that because for a compact guy, you wouldn't actually necessarily imagine that. And yeah, I mean, but they're both physically robust. They look strong. They don't look like kind of lanky, gangly teenagers. I mean, I think Aidan Heaven, who's on the bench, who's obviously very, very tall, looks sort of very stretched out and thin and stuff. Whereas these guys look like they've been working in the gym since they were 12, which they probably have been.
Yeah.
But he's just brave on the ball, Lewis-Skelly. That's what I really, really admire about him. He gets the ball, he looks up, even in a tight space. He's okay. I'll assess my options, make the pass, keep it tidy. If it has to be simple, it has to be simple. But, if a pass goes astray, he doesn't mind trying again if the right pass is, is there to be made. I thought his link-up was really natural with Sterling. They seem to have a kind of real quick understanding of what each other's strengths were. And Sterling, hugging the touchline, wanting to drag his man out there, knowing that he had his opponent on toes because he had the pace. And Lewis-Skelly was clever enough to recognise that as well. So, yeah, it was a fantastic through ball. It was a pass, I think, maybe we first saw when he was fielded in pre-season, possibly the behind closed doors game right at the beginning of the pre-season.
Right.
I think he made one of those passes inside the lines, and everyone went, "Oh, okay, here we go." It's like a Zinchenko. So good on him. I'm really curious to see whether Arteta considers him a left back and that's that now, or is he really a midfielder? Because he was playing in midfield for the youth team.
Yeah.
So there's something that what is it about Lewis-Skelly's qualities that he feels would be better served there for the moment?
I suppose
maybe it's just opportunities.
Yeah, opportunity. Maybe it's because they see him as a long-term option in that position. His skill set fits the sort of current profile of what you need from a left back, certainly in certain scenarios. Might also be just the only way to get him into the team, to give him those minutes.
Probably fair.
If you think back to certain players when Arsene Wenger used them, they'd start out wide. In a more traditional 4-4-2 when we used to play that back in the day. So you can remember Cesc Fabregas.
Diaby played out and right. Yeah,
Cesc Fabregas played a bit out on the right. It's a way to sort of expand their horizons, but get them those minutes. But you could easily see Lewis-Skelly if he develops. And I know we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but that sort of left 8 profile of player where I think Nwaneri could fit as well. So I don't know. I think it is just about making sure that these guys have got some minutes and got some opportunities.
I think it'll be interesting heading into the second half of the season, depending on our injury situation, what they decide to do. I think Nwaneri, I would imagine, will stick around because we just don't have cover there. But let's say we did have all of the left backs available heading into the second half of the season. Would it make sense to maybe send Lewis-Skelly out on loan?
Sure. Yeah.
I think probably.
Yeah.
And I think there'd be a million clubs who'd want to take him. And that might not be a bad thing, because actually then with a half season of championship football under his belt coming into next season, you're then looking at him as a real kind of regular option potentially.
Yeah.
So it's exciting. I think, as you said right at the top, this was something we used to see all the time in the League Cup, and we had that kind of run where we were just playing average sides, fielding our own average players, and it wasn't a particularly exciting prospect going to the League Cup. But having this little look at the future it was really, really good. And I have to say, just genuinely really chuffed for some of those kids.
Yeah.
I know we haven't really touched on the goalkeeping situation, but to have a 16-year-old goalkeeper is frankly ridiculous.
There is probably a conversation to be had about why we're in a position where, I know we're a bit unfortunate. Rye got an injury. We signed a cup-tied goalkeeper, so that's on us. Tommy Setford, who was brought in from Ajax, who would have been probably the guy to get the nod last night, to get the gloves, he's injured. And then there are, a sort of a clutch of young goalkeepers. Nygaard, I think, is a little bit injured. Brian Okonkwo, Alexi Rojas as well. Yeah. You have to imagine that Jack Porter being 16, and by the way, he only turned 16 in July. Think about that. I have to say, I thought the way we managed that as a team was really good. Do you remember the first goal kick? And he wasn't quite sure what he should do with the goal kick. Should he play it short to Kivior and, do that little routine that the goalkeepers do? And I'm sure they do in training all the time. But I think it was Jorginho who came over and said, look, put the ball down, kick it upfield. Let's not do anything stupid. If he gets caught on the ball in the first couple of minutes of the game, that's going to absolutely destroy him. I thought Bolton would be... if you're the Bolton manager, you're saying there's a child in goal. He's 16 years of age, from corners, from set pieces. Let's throw in a few crosses. Somebody in the first 10 minutes, just go and bump him and see how he reacts, right? But we didn't let them do that. They had a couple of set pieces I think they didn't make the most of, some near post corners. But I think in general, the way we protected this young man was very impressive. And I know you mentioned Kiwior at the start, but I thought he was really good in that regard as well, where he took the ball off him or made sure that he didn't put the goalkeeper under any pressure if he did have to go back that way.
Yeah, I mean, There were a couple of. I mean, there was an early one where a Bolton player came steaming in, and the ball had gone back to him, and obviously he kind of won a goal kick off the fact that he'd been tackled, and it was like a wake up call for him. I thought because he was clearly nervous. I mean, there was this sense of watching him just before the kickoff, a lot of clapping, kind of a lot of like, holy shit, where the fuck am I?
Yeah, exactly.
In the middle of a pitch with 60,000 people looking at me, and I'm in goal for Arsenal.
Yeah.
Which it was kind of amusing, but you were yourself, exactly as you said, I was like, I really hope that Bolton don't kind of go all in on him. I think just towards the end of the first half, he managed to get a fist on a corner, which was good to get the ball away. But he really didn't actually have a save to make. I mean, when Bolton scored, the guy took the ball really, really well, actually. Just kind of rounded him and made it look quite easy. There was something quite funny in the way they scored that goal, because I noticed Jorginho was the last man back, and I was thinking to myself, okay, let's see what Jorginho's pace is like against a League One striker. And I just watched the guy stretch away. Jorginho looks like a bloke who does the 100 metres in 16 seconds. It's pretty appalling. But
that's never his strength, which is why I wonder about leaving him as the last man. I understand he reads the game well, but he does get caught.
It was not something we want to be doing in a Premier League game, I don't think. But anyway, look, it's fine. It was it's a side issue really in a game where that just didn't matter. But good on Porter. I'll be really curious to see. I mean, obviously you'd expect him to make way now in the next round if Setford is fit, because that wasn't by design. And I think, just to go back to what you were saying, the club at the beginning of the summer weren't thinking to themselves, oh yeah, okay, the kid who's 15 at the moment, he can play in the League Cup next season.
No.
We got ourselves into a muddle this summer. We knew Ramsdale was going to go for 12 months. We knew that Hine was, under contract until June, and we didn't sort that out until after his contract had ended. We then went and bought, 2 teenagers, one of whom got himself injured automatically, and then the other one, Setford, got himself injured. I get that there was bad luck, but the churn and the turnover in the goalkeeping department from top to bottom this summer has been unprecedented, and we didn't manage that very well, I don't think.
Do you think we got a little bit too caught up in the Juan Garcia thing? And, I think, ultimately the signing of Neto when Ramsdale went is the kind of signing that we should be making, not spending 20 odd million on another goalkeeper, despite what Iñaki Caña would like. That is something I think we got distracted by. I thought James referenced this a little bit in the article he did in The Athletic after the transfer window closed, about how there was a little bit of like, okay, I need to put my foot down here from Edu. We're going to sign this guy. That's who we're getting. But I think there was probably scope for another signing like that, if you know what I mean. That you very rarely get down to your third choice goalkeeper. But we were in a situation last night where we were down to our... I suppose he is our fourth choice. I suppose he is the fourth choice, given that he's the guy who played, behind Raya, behind Neto, behind Setford, and then he is fourth choice. But, when you are building a squad, despite the fact you might have been a little bit unlucky here or there, if you are turning to a 16-year-old, with absolutely no disrespect to him, and what a great night he had. And I love that moment in the final seconds of the game where Bolton got a corner and he just caught it and final whistle went. I thought that was just really nice for him. An experience he'll never forget, of course. But, you have to ask questions why we're in that position, that maybe the squad building, wasn't quite what it should be in that sense.
Yeah, I think ultimately signing a cup-tied goalkeeper, which is what we did, knowing that we'd need him for the competition that he was cup tied for, was a sign that we were in a sticky patch.
Yes.
Right? we'd obviously tried to spend 50 grand on a Premier League goalkeeper and failed with that. The Wolves guy, Dan Bentley.
Yeah.
So we were clearly scrabbling around trying to find goalkeepers, and then we didn't. I think had Arteta decided to pick one of the under-21 options, so whether it was Rojas or another, that would have raised fewer eyebrows because obviously he's 18.
Mm-hmm.
But it's an interesting one now, isn't it? Because if Porter's 16 and he's basically been elevated above several under-21 goalkeepers, what kind of a message does that now send to them about their future at the club? I mean, they may well be quite realistic about it anyway because they're teenage goalkeepers and teenagers very rarely get opportunities in the first team. But yeah, it's look, it shouldn't overshadow the fact that the kid did well. He's had an amazing night. But I definitely think behind the scenes, they'd be looking at this and going, yeah, we need to get a grip on this.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Right. I want to talk a little bit about Raheem Sterling because, he's the final signing of the summer. I mean, there are other players on the night. I think, you can talk about Rice, you can talk about Saka. I mean, what struck me last night about Saka was just like how unbelievably good he is without really getting out of second gear. Another assist for Bukayo Saka. The game against Atalanta is the only game we've played this season in which he hasn't had a goal contribution. I think it's 6 assists from 7 games, 1 goal as well. So, we don't need to talk too much about that. Declan Rice, again, someone who didn't get out of second gear. I think you could see his goal, that the difference between a top Premier League player and a League One player, defender, leaving aside the air kick from the Bolton defender, which was, obviously a horrible mistake, but the speed at which Rice took a touch, put the ball out, and then curled it into the back of the net. It's that really struck me about that goal was just how quickly he executed from that mistake. Whereas I think when you go down the levels a bit, it takes players a little bit longer, to get the ball out of their feet. Think Solanke in the North London derby, for example. The levels are different, aren't they?
Yeah, 100%. It's funny, I made one note about the senior players last night, and it was Saka and Rice are very good, even in second gear, but we knew that.
Yeah. Which
is exactly what you said. And then, just looking around the team, I thought Calafiori's got a real stature about him. For a guy who himself is only, 22, 23, he has a commanding presence, and I think he's a big communicator on the pitch as well. And I just watched him, I was just like, this guy's a good signing. There's no doubt about him being a good signing. I just really liked him. And you can see this obviously was him playing at centre back, what he could bring to that position as well. Yeah. That willingness to move forward, make things happen, just really, really good. And Jesus, just absolutely desperate for a goal, running around like a madman, trying too hard. He's starting to look like that kind of, I don't know, like he could play for about 5 years and he just keep kicking the ball and it'd come off the post or something.
I said to James last night, just by text, I feel like he would be about 20% better if he just picked the first option, the most obvious thing to do. And I understand that if you're picking the obvious thing, maybe it becomes easy to defend against. You want to try something to unsettle the opposition. But a little bit too often, I feel like he overcomplicates things for himself. Whereas if he took that first simple option, whether it's a pass, whether it's a shot, he had one that was just wide, actually. He was quite unlucky. He did well to hold off the defender. First time kind of snapshot from the edge of the box, it went just wide. But yeah, look, he tried hard. But I think he is, he's somebody who is a little bit maybe like Martinelli at this moment in time, running into a little bit of a brick wall when it comes to end product.
Yeah, I think the difference between Jesus and Martinelli is that Martinelli seems quite comfortable being a hard worker and taking some, getting his flowers for the off the ball work. Whereas Jesus just strikes me as someone who wants to have the ball at his feet. And what I saw last night was a guy who was taking maybe one too many touches, just wanting to dribble round a guy when maybe, as you say, if he just kept it simple. But I feel like he's almost like he needs the ball at his feet and to feel that he's in control of it to be kind of somehow, building the confidence up again. He will inevitably get goals this season, Jesus. It's just he needs one soon, I think, just to settle it down. I mean, yeah, we should talk about Sterling though, shouldn't we?
Yeah,
because I think that was where we were going with this.
An assist and a goal on his first start. Again, taking into account the opposition, but I thought there were things about the way that he moved which were interesting. The kind of runs that he makes. We don't necessarily have anyone who makes those runs from those positions. Or a couple of times, I think Lewis-Skelly and maybe Calafiori saw the runs and didn't quite get the pass right. But that sort of diagonal run in from the left-hand side into those central areas, I mean, that stood out to me. And, if we're going to have conversations about variety and attacking variety and different ways to hurt teams, I was looking at Raheem Sterling last night and thinking, okay, well, that's a slightly different string to our bow in the attacking third. Yeah,
I just walked away and thought, he's a busy little fucker, isn't he? Like he's really persistent, and he just constantly, it's like he just won't, he'll go again. And I just think, that was a guy who knew that he could score. He knew he could make an impact, and he just kind of, maybe unlike Jesus, he didn't push it to. It's hard to explain, isn't it? I watched a guy who just kind of kept doing something that he's done his whole career, and he knew it would pay off, and he was quite relaxed about it, and he would keep doing it, and then eventually he gets his reward. Mm-hmm. Whereas, I think in contrast, maybe Jesus was trying and losing confidence, whereas this was just part of the process for Sterling. I think he's that kind of guy. He'll try and he'll try and he'll try. He's like the guy at the school disco who doesn't mind getting turned down by every single girl in the place because he knows by the end of it he'll get one, right? So yeah, that's my in-depth analysis of Raheem Sterling for you, everyone.
Thank you very much, disco dancer Raheem. Yeah, no, I was impressed, I have to say, and he was in the right place at the right time. Saka with the assist as well for that one. Kai Havertz came on, got himself a goal. I was, looking maybe for this game as one where Martinelli might be able to get himself on the score sheet. Didn't quite happen for him. There were some moments here or there, but I suppose the other part of being 4-5-1 up at home against Bolton is that it allows you to bring on even more Hale End Academy graduates. We had another couple of debuts as well. If we're going to talk about the guys who started, we should talk about the amazingly named Maldini Kakuri. I mean, that lad's a unit. He's 18 years of age. I mean, he looks the part already. Came on very tidy alongside Gabriel, who'd come on at that point for Calafiori. I mean, he's a big lad, and he's only 18.
Yeah.
So
I think what was it? He was in one of the Hale End documentaries, and I think he'd kind of signed for the club a couple of years ago, and I looked at him. I thought, blimey, that is a parent, isn't it? Giving the name,
yeah, Maldini, yeah, exactly.
Raising him as a centre back.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. Like calling your kid fucking Pele or Messi. This is Messi Murphy. He's joining from the Shamrock Rovers Academy. No pressure.
I think we do have a Messi in the academy, don't we? That sort of 6-year-old or something. Do you remember those videos?
Oh yeah.
Or Messo or something.
Messi, yeah.
No, I thought he was great. I mean, as you said, really big. But Gabriel was brilliant next to him. Just spent the whole time just giving him easy passes, taking it back, directing him where to go. Yeah. Really, really nice. And then Cabia came on as well, didn't he?
Yeah.
So, I mean, what a great thing for both of those guys. I mean, I always wonder how those choices are made, I guess, because, did Maldini get the go this time instead of Heaven because Heaven had a go in pre-season?
Yeah.
That type of thing. But
or does it tell you something about the pecking order? I'm not sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Are they trying new things? Are they curious to see how people deal with the pressure?
Yeah.
I mean, I think actually I watched Heaven play in the highlights of the youth league when the under-19s lost 4-1 to Atalanta, and he made a bit of a ricket, and I did wonder whether that might play into things a bit, but who knows? I mean, I'm speculating, but no, it's great. I mean, it'd be curious to see if these guys get another run out. I mean, looking at the draw, obviously away at Preston, relatively kind given who we could have got,
of course,
it's also squeezed between a Liverpool game and a Newcastle game. I think that will definitely mean that rotation will have to happen. So they may get They may get more games.
Yeah, they may do. And, fingers crossed, if they do, they can perform the way they did last night. And, to have this opportunity, as you said a bit earlier, some of the cup draws in recent years have not been particularly kind. At the same time, I don't know that we've necessarily had the young players to come through as well. So maybe we're beginning to see a new generation of young players make their breakthrough. And certainly, I know there's been a lot of talk about Arteta and young players, and does he, Arteta hates young players. He doesn't like them, all this kind of stuff, But I do think it really is about the context and about the way that you can introduce these players to sort of maximize their opportunity as much as anything else. Like, I think there have been times where maybe he could have been a little less risk averse in a couple of situations. But for the most part, I think his outlook is to ensure that when you bring a young player through, you do it in a way which, is most beneficial to the young player, most beneficial to the team, and obviously then most beneficial to the club overall, because you want them to come in and do what Lewis-Skelly did last night, do what Nwaneri did last night. What did you make of the decision by Nwaneri to shoot for the second goal when he was through? And I think he had Rice one side of him, and just outside of Rice was Bukayo Saka, where he could have played simple pass left and it would have been a tap in for either one of those players. And he went for goal. Goalkeeper sort of got a touch on it, but he scored. What does that say to you about, or anything at all? Is it just a case of you saw a goal and went, fuck it, I'm here, I'm going to have a go? Is it a confidence thing?
Yeah, I think he just saw that opportunity, backed himself, and went, I've got one, I'm going for another. Ben, who I was sitting with yesterday, kind of was screaming, pass it, just as he went through, because it looked like giving it to Rice on a plate would have been the very Arsenal thing to do, I think. But I'm certainly not going to criticise a player who actually ends up putting the ball in the back of the net. I think it was interesting. Arteta kind of joked in the press conference, didn't he? He was like, I'm glad the ball went in because I know what his teammates would have said to him if he hadn't have done that.
Yeah.
And I think maybe there's a lesson there for him as well. It wasn't the best finish in the world. It went straight through the goalkeeper. Mm-hmm. So he can almost kind of breathe a sigh of relief while enjoying the fact that he scored a brace and became the first is it teenager or something to score a brace on his first start for Arsenal.
Really?
There were so many records last night. It's funny, isn't it? Like, back 15, 20 years ago, nobody was really kind of bothering to sort of check all of these things and go through databases to find out who did what and when. Yeah. Now, you look at a game and there seem to have been about 13 broken records last night for various reasons. The
first goalkeeper whose name begins with the letter J, who was born in, what year was that kid born in? I don't know. I'm not good at maths. All of that stuff.
Well, the one that really I didn't like last night was the fact that I think the 4 debutants were born after the Emirates Stadium was built, which really, really made me feel quite old. And I say that obviously on your birthday.
Yeah, thanks very much. By the way, the message that you sent to me yesterday about Jack Porter going, you're old enough to be his granddad, that made me feel great as well. So thank you. I appreciate that. That's all right. Let's widen it out just a little bit and just reflect on, where we are after that really busy week, where we are after the start of the season, which, I think has been testing from a fixture point of view with those away games at Aston Villa, away at Spurs, away at Manchester City, testing because of some of the decisions that have been made and playing, for basically a full half with 10 men against Brighton, a full half with 10 men against Manchester City. We've won, the Carabao Cup game. It struck me last night, that the injuries that we've got at this moment in time, had we not got some of the results that we got, we could easily say with some justification, and I say justification rather than an excuse, well, we have all these injuries. We've had to play with 10 men in the most difficult, game you can play with 10 men. And, these are mitigating circumstances as to why we didn't really get what we wanted from those games. It struck me Andrew, that despite the injuries, despite the decisions, despite the challenges that we face, despite the challenges of the fixture list and playing a Champions League game on a Thursday ahead of a league game against Man City on a Sunday, all of these small things add up to, what you've got to cope with over the course of the season. I think it demonstrates to me anyway a real progression within this group of players, within this team, that we've been able to, take 7 points from 9 from those away games. We're 2 points behind City, after whatever it is, 4 or 5 games in the Premier League. With all of these things going on, we have, I think, by any measure, had a really successful start to the season. And I think it does highlight the way this team has matured, and I say that on a day when we're talking about a lot of 16 and 17-year-olds playing, but I think the maturity of the team, the squad, the manager, the whole thing is evident in what we've done so far this season.
There's definitely a level of belief there that this team, collectively has, that they know that they can go head to head with anyone now and give them a good game. Not a negative thing, but obviously we saw last season that we started pretty well, not as well as we'd started the season before, and then we kind of had that bit where we ran out of puff at Christmas, and then we needed the Dubai break, and then we went again. And obviously the year before we had the break because of the World Cup, so some players had some time off. I mean, we just can't afford that to happen this year, right? So while this has been very, very tough, we don't really know what the long-term repercussions are going to be of the fact that we've really been through the mill for the first 2 months of the season. Are we able to go through the mill now and maintain our standards all the way through, which is exactly what we have to do. We may actually end up benefiting from the fact that some of these guys have been injured, and actually they'll come back and they might be a bit fresher, and we'll see. I mean, Marino, Odegaard, there could be 2 very, very important players, obviously. But yeah, I mean, we're a side. We are a very, very, very good side from top to bottom in every single position. And you love to see it. It's so much more enjoyable being good. And I think there's a long way to go. It's so easy at this point of the season to start thinking further ahead, but it's really boring. It's almost like I've been trained by the team and the manager now, one game at a time, one game at a time, one game at a time. And I feel like amongst the supporter base, because we've come through this really, really tough period, that there's a sense that we can somehow sort of ease into the next period. And actually, we know full well that this next block of games before the international break are super, super important to build up some momentum, to maybe change the narrative around the fact that we're a set-piece dark arts team and to start scoring some goals and all the rest of it. But we can't take it for granted that will happen because, with Odegaard injured, we do need to find a bit of flow. And, there's no mugs in the Premier League anymore. And even though I know there's a whole load of teams that haven't actually won a game yet, they're going to win a game at some point, and you don't want it to be against you. So we just need to be on our guard. And I think, whether Arteta has to go get the pickpockets again and remind everyone that, anything can happen at any moment, that's fine. But yeah, it's just me being kind of naturally cautious.
No, I get it. And I think, everybody understands at this point that Mikel Arteta will be the first guy to ensure that everybody keeps their feet on the ground and doesn't get carried away or think that any game in this league or any competition that we play in is going to be easy. But I've been impressed by how we've coped with a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff. It's
real character.
Yeah.
Real character. I mean, the North London derby I was really worried about, and they just went and did a job on Spurs. And then it's been talked about a lot, but that City game, going 1-0 down and not doing the old Arsenal and collapsing and doing 2-3 goals in a row and then being kind of completely out of it by half time. That game, we went there, we went 1-0 down, we figured out how to change it, we changed it, and then, we got unlucky, and then we had to just deal with a new situation. But again, we dealt with that situation pretty well.
How much do you think that's been overlooked? The fact that, okay, all the focus is on the second half, all the focus is on the red card, all the focus is on whether that's fair or unfair and the defensive effort, and we'll come to the, in inverted commas, dark arts now in a moment. But the fact that Arsenal did respond to Manchester City, didn't get cowed by going down early, and did have a 2-1 lead at half-time, one we held on to till like the final seconds of injury time. That, I mean, there was a thing called Fergie time. I mean, there's a thing called Pep time now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously very, very annoying to concede that late goal. But I think like everyone or most people, I felt a huge amount of pride the following morning about how they dealt with the situation. In the game, when we went 2-1 up, I genuinely thought there was a third there. I mean, we had them. Now, whether that was just purely a reaction to Rodri going off and the psychological blow that City themselves suffered losing their best player, maybe that played into it, quite possibly. But this team now has intelligent players who were on the pitch and were able to solve problems that were posed to them. And I think in the past, we hadn't had that. Arteta had to coach everyone through the process and all the rest of it. Whereas now I look and I go, okay, these guys have figured it out. They know where they need to get the ball now. Yeah. They know who to avoid and how to, take and capitalise on the set pieces and all the rest of it. So it's game intelligence, and that's grown because we've got a young team, but a very, very experienced team. And they play together now and they understand and they've been through a lot of situations. And last year in the Champions League is another great example. You just playing different types of opposition and having to figure things out in the game. And that gives me so much confidence going into the rest of this season that they'll believe in what they do. They know they've got the qualities. It's not just one-dimensional play. They can basically break teams down in any number of ways. They just need to be patient and believe in themselves. And yeah it's good. It's positive. It's exactly what you want from a team who the expectations are on to challenge for the title. Sure.
And yeah, when you say they're experienced, they've had a lot of experiences as well, which I think we've learned a lot from. What have you made of this week's sort of media spotlight focus on Arsenal and the so-called dark arts, as if somehow this is something we have invented and just sort of brought to the table this season? We all understand that's absolutely absurd, but the fact that there has been so much focus on this, and I think what struck me about this is it's not just the sort of lower end of the football coverage spectrum which is engaged in this kind of stuff, for want of a better word, the talk sporty and sort of clickbaity stuff. It's been prevalent throughout sections of the media that you think would have a little bit more sense. Is this just, about Arsenal being good? Is it about the media landscape in which we live right now, where, like Sky Sports on that overlap thing, right? Love Clive, but I can't watch that. Just can't do it, right? Because, they're putting up a graphic saying, "Our Arsenal cheats." And it's like, what is this? Like, this is not real analysis. This is not the kind of stuff that the key broadcaster of the Premier League should be engaging in, because it's so easily dismissed as nonsense because we've all watched the Premier League. We all watch football. I've been watching football since I was a kid, and the dark arts, if you like, have been part and parcel of it for as long as I can remember. And they've, obviously changed and developed over time. It used to be a case of the dark arts was very much, inextricably linked with on-pitch violence, right? Yes. But things have developed, and it's about maybe gamesmanship. It's about game management. It's about managing the game state. It's about, giving your team 20 seconds to get a breather. All this focus on David Raya. Does he go down too easily more than any other goalkeeper? Think, what was that game? Was it Chris Kirkland? Remember Chris Kirkland taking all that time to take goal kicks, and every time he caught the ball, he'd lie on the ball and all that kind of stuff. And then Thierry Henry scored a goal against him in the last couple of minutes, or we scored a goal against Wigan, I think it was, in the last couple of minutes, and Thierry Henry got in Chris Kirkland's face, and everyone was like, "Oh, Thierry Henry's a disgrace." And nobody said anything about the way Chris Kirkland had played. So, this stuff has been part and parcel of football since time immemorial. But all of a sudden, the focus is on Arsenal. I mean, is it just a byproduct of this sort of engagement, clickbait world that we live in? And this is how media organizations have to operate now. They can't ignore this. I just think there are enough good people out there to provide better analysis, and it's been quite disappointing, I think, that we haven't seen that, and that some of the people you would expect to provide some of that analysis have fallen into this kind of garbage, pale nonsense.
The thing is, I think actually what we're in now is there's like a two-tier world of analysis, really. There are a lot of specialists who are so ingrained in the detail of a football club, whether it be the tactics, the culture, the finance, that if you're following really, really closely, that stuff is an incredible resource. And the problem is then you then go into a kind of generalist environment like a TV program where they're pitching to a broader audience, and the lowest common denominator kind of sort of themes end up playing out. And it's frustrating then for the person who's in the detail to kind of be able to kind of pick apart some of these arguments that are playing out, but then get repeated on the radio and then get repeated in TV columns and then get repeated by pundits who haven't played the game in 20 years. I think it's, that's where some of the frustration lies. I think the reason why the media are currently sort of picking on Arsenal about the dark arts is we're good again. We're topical. People genuinely see us as a threat. I think we should see it as a compliment that they want to talk about us, even if it's annoying as fuck, some of the stuff they say. And then I think, again, what you said about violent conduct being the way that dark arts kind of played out on the pitch in the past. Obviously, violent conduct, by and large, these days is, stamped out by the PGM away. I mean, it should be. It's definitely supposed to be. Whereas, I know. But the laugh, watching Paul Scholes on the overlap talking about Arsenal being cheats because they're, doing the dark arts. All I got to do is show him any number of, highlight reels from Arsenal Manchester United games of the, Wenger Fergie era, and you watch the guys crashing into each other. I mean,
the Jose Antonio Reyes game, for example, God. Was that not the most egregious example of dark arts being applied?
I mean, that entire game was. I mean, it was as if you said to an AI thing, generate me a match whereby the dark arts were shown. Manchester United in that game, Mike Riley was the referee in charge, but everything from Rooney diving for the penalty that was scored. It's just so. Yeah, it's a bit laughable. I guess it is what it is. I'm trying not to get too flustered by any of it, and
should we enjoy it?
Probably.
Should we enjoy the fact that, look, you can get frustrated because, like you say, you. I think we as Arsenal fans and well-informed Arsenal fans understand what we're seeing, particularly when it comes to how other teams operate. So I get people get frustrated and they want to bite back and everything else. But I think ultimately what we should do, as difficult as it might be, is to sort of see this as some kind of a compliment and enjoy the fact that people like that are losing their shit over Arsenal being good again.
Look, if Arsenal win the league this season, big if, but if we win the league this season, I can assure you that the narrative around the team will not be about the fact that we achieved it via dark arts, because you don't win the league via dark arts alone. Mm-hmm. So, maybe we do waste a little bit of time. Maybe we do kind of kick the ball away stupidly. I mean, maybe but you'd be naive not to push the boundaries of what is and isn't acceptable, because that is in its own way part of a winning mentality, right? Exactly.
You don't make the progress we've made without having those aspects of your game. And I think it's something, Tim says, with regards to Arteta, is that he wants to maximize every aspect of the game, whether it's restarts, set pieces, all the things that you can do that can help you win a game. And if the dark arts are like 0.01% of how you might get a result away at Manchester City while you're playing with 10 men, then you fucking do it. Because you'd be, as he said the other day in his press conference, about our approach in that second half. What did he say? He said, well, we've had some bad lessons in the past. We'd be thick to do that again. He's not thick, and this is not a fucking thick football team.
And I think maybe, Arsenal as a club over the last 25, 30 years with Arsene Wenger's influence have been known to be a kind of purist football entity, right? And I think under Arsene Wenger, if we'd gone 2-1 down leading away at Manchester City, we probably would have tried to continue playing the same way, and we may well have got punished. I don't want to, completely say that's the way it would have been, but in all likelihood, that's the way it would have been. And it's almost as if everyone's gone, oh, hang on, you're Arsenal. You're supposed to play that way, the way that we all remember you playing. And now, Arteta's gone, well, fuck that for a laugh. We're not going to do that because that didn't work. We're going to just try and see out and get the point. I think, was it Chelsea who went to Spurs last season, and Spurs went down to 10 men and continued playing with that stupid high line?
They were down to 9, weren't they, at some point?
And they kept playing with the stupid high line, and ultimately they got fucking punished for it. And you were kind of like, okay, well, there's a guy who's decided not to amend his tactics to a situation, and he's ended up losing a derby 4-1 at home. And even though there was a period in that game where everyone's going, oh, it's great, isn't it, just to see them just going all gung-ho, everyone else by the end of it just went, oh, that was actually pretty stupid, wasn't it?
Well, but no, a load of people afterwards are going, that's what you want to see? That's brave from Ange. And it's like, that is
not
stupid.
If you want to win something.
Well, of course. You know? It's, Anyway, we won't pay too much more attention to anything that the pundit classes say until the next time they say something, and we'll all get completely outraged about it. Anyway, if Arsenal win the league this season, we will, of course, roll out a series of Dark Arts merchandise, which you'll be able to purchase through the website. Free shipping, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, we'll see what happens. We better leave it there, though. Andrew, as ever, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Lovely chatting.
Thank you very much indeed to Andrew, and you can find him in all the usual social media places, usually at @Alan Sport. That is at @Alan Sport. Right, I'm going to leave it there for today. I just want to say thank you to all of you, as always, for being here and for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you'd like to join us over on Patreon tomorrow, we will preview the Leicester game in lots more detail. We'll maybe have a bit more information as to who might or might not be available to Mikel Arteta ahead of that game. So you can join myself and Lewis over on Patreon tomorrow. It's patreon.com/Arseblog, patreon.com/Arseblog. It's only $6 a month to join and get instant access to everything that we do there, as well as supporting everything that we do on Arseblog. All the coverage brought to you ad-free across our website. So if you'd like to support us, Patreon is a great way of doing that. It's patreon.com/Arseblog. For now, though, take it easy, folks, and we will catch you on the next one. Until then, cheers. Bye-bye. Welcome back to Talk Shite Radio, talking shite about sport 24 hours a day. Arsenal are in the spotlight this week for something known as the Dark Arts. Nobody had ever heard of them before now, but now it's all anybody can talk about, including our guest today, former professional Danny Pills. Danny, what do you make of these Dark Arts? Well, to be honest, I don't really understand what they are. Well, the Dark Arts, Danny, Dark Arts. Dark Arts? Yeah, the Dark Arts. Come on, Danny, you must have an opinion. You've got something to say about everything else. I just don't really understand what carts have got to do with what happens on a football pitch. Well, what do you mean carts, Danny? Well, you keep talking about these Dark Arts. What sort of a cart is that? Is that like a shopping cart? And what the bloody hell is a dar? No, Danny, Dark Arts, not dark carts, Dark Arts.
Oh, I see. Oh, no, I don't have anything to do with those kind of people. Don't like them. They drink lattes rather than just a good old-fashioned white coffee. What's wrong with a white coffee?
You're a bloody white coffee.
What did you say?
Never mind, we've got to take a commercial break here. When we return, former football hardman Roy Keane will pretend to get so incensed by something, his voice will rise to a pitch that only dogs can hear.
Talk Shite Radio, talking shite about sport 24 hours a day. 24 hours a day.